She's really committed to art. She believes in it. That is incredibly infectious.
I think her taste is like consuming everything that is happening.
Somebody who was born from a modest background but has risen to become really ultimately one of the most intuitive collectors of her generation.
The treasures in this collection are extraordinary, and the fact that Pauline lived with all of this material is mind-bogglingly glamorous.
I was born in the north of England, and the working classes of that period were brought up with tremendous discipline, with a great sense of humour.
Pauline Karpidas really is, I think, one of the great Grande Dame of collecting. It wasn't really until she moved to London, and indeed Athens, that suddenly this unity, if you like, with the zeitgeist of the contemporary became an obsession for her. And I think the real pivotal moment here was when she opened her first women's clothing store, My Fair Lady, in Athens, and then met, quite by chance, Dinos Karpidas, who eventually became her husband.
He was collecting a little bit of Impressionism, and I pushed it forward, and we would go to Sotheby's and look at the paintings on the wall. Dinos said, "Look, we're going to see this man called Alexander Iolas." We walk into this house, and either side of the walls was covered with these unbelievable paintings. I said, "What is that? Who is that painting?" And he said, "Oh, that's Max Ernst, that's Magritte." Anyhow, the next morning I got in the car and I went running round. He takes his towel, puts it on his head. First of all, he said, "I'm retired." And secondly, he said, "Do you know what it is to put a collection together? It will take at least 6 years to put 10 masterpieces together." And that was the start of an amazing journey into the real art world of Surrealism.
I think Iolas really, in this relationship, plays the role almost like an Old Testament prophet. He was a gallerist who found Andy Warhol, for example. He was the gallerist who showed Magritte in America.
The collection of Pauline Karpidas is an example of freedom, of self-confidence in her taste. It's not a comfortable collection. It's bold. There is a lot of risk. Risk is a virtue to me. This is a collection which has discipline. You know, there's not any mediocrity. Everything is great. Everything is valuable in terms of quality.
She has a very, very good eye. Often I would just show her things, and I would know immediately what she was going to go for, and then she would totally commit, which was kind of very exciting for the artist and for me as well.
This is the culmination of an effort. This is the culmination of a gaze, the culmination of years of search, studies, encounters, readings.
Shortly after meeting Iolas, she also met the extraordinary German artist who, of course, was such a pivotal link between German Dada and French Surrealism, Max Ernst. And Max Ernst's works, of course, permeate the collection, as do so many other core Surrealist artists like Oscar Dominguez, for example, or Victor Brauner, or Salvador Dalí, Belmer, André Masson, René Magritte, Picasso. Movement of art which was sort of defined by the whimsical, by the dreamlike, by the automatic, by the inner self coming out in the most unexpected manner.
The Pauline Karpidas collection is made of great masterworks. When you see, for example, her Magritte, La Statue Volante, it's beautifully painted. The Picabia, Les Deux Amis, what a painting. Picabia said that he made his 1940s paintings to illustrate the bedrooms of prostitutes. Pauline embraced that very rebellious approach.
The great thing about some of the American artists that have entered the collection is that many of these are artists who saw the great Surrealist artists. So, for example, Jeff Koons is an artist who's openly stated the deep influence of Salvador Dalí. It's no coincidence that the collection of Pauline's has great Dalí and Jeff Koons.
When I opened my gallery in '97, she kind of was interested in seeing what was going on in terms of the younger scene.
In '78, Alexander Iolas took us to meet Andy. And Andy, he wanted us to do our portrait. Put my beautiful jewels on, and that was the start of an amazing relationship into my world of art. And then I met Keith Haring, and I started collecting.
Pauline has been incredibly singular in the way that she's put together wonderful objects, but at the same time she's always loved to work with accomplices, working alongside the greatest interior designers of her time, such as Jacques Range, David Gill, Francis Sultana, and indeed also some of the greatest design minds of this generation like Mattia Bonetti, André Dubreuil and the Lalanne.
I've been very fortunate and blessed to have met Pauline through her, if you like, patronage and my creativity with my artists. I've done a journey with her which has been very beautiful, but it's been very creative and I think historical. And I think that is the part of it that when you do this kind of work, you may not realize what you are creating today. But I mean, the legacy is there, and I think they're kind of the masterpieces of tomorrow.
Her endearing style has been a resounding thing in my life since when I met her. So unique, her way, her vision. I realized she's a window to an extraordinary way of living.
When I had an exhibition in London with an artist, I would, as a rite of passage, would ask the artist for a glass of champagne at Pauline's apartment, where she was very, very generous, and every single time would give a complete tour of the collection in the apartment in London. Pauline always had a deep respect for artists as well, so they enjoyed being with her, and she's made many artists laugh and feel treasured and appreciated, and that's a very special way of engaging with art.
She met François-Xavier and Claude in the 70s in Paris. They start to make a specific pieces for her. For example, Claude François-Xavier made a table pour Pauline. She ordered a bed and Claude made something very poetic. When you saw some pieces by Lalanne, it's like a surrealist sculpture. This is why she loved the Lalanne art world. It's a universe.
With the Lalanne, of course, they were not in the mainstream of artistic culture at the time. Pauline, though, of course, just saw beauty, creativity, innovation, and would never have been without a Lalanne brooch or Lalanne earrings.
When you're like Pauline Karpidas, living with such art on your walls, you have to understand that those paintings, those sculptures are not mute. They are eloquent. They speak to you every day.
She had, for many years, kind of created this incredible scenes, if you like, within a home, with the architect, the designer, the interiors, very much based on what was at the time perhaps the fashionable furniture. And she would get very involved sometimes. We created this bookcase where she could actually sit comfortably and read. She loved every piece individually. I mean, what is personal to her, what is personal to me, everything is really kind of equally as a strong one to the next. I think they're really masterpieces, which they fitted with the Surrealist paintings very well.
Pauline's collection is a love and a passion that really knew no bounds. And I think it's very much her life. I now, in this chapter in her life, it's a time of reflection, but yet, I'm sure every day there's always new ideas coming through.
She was at a time and place that was essential for the creation of this collection. It could not have happened at any other moment.
She's that kind of personality, full of life, full of energy, full of ideas, full of youth.
Karpidas' collection is evidence of passion and Pauline's commitment to discovery, really, and learning, and how exciting that is, and how that is the point of art in many ways.
I think it can't be underestimated that for a woman operating in the collecting world when she was so fearlessly, it's truly a mark of someone highly innovative.
Pauline today, I'm sure, looks back on all what she created with a great deal of her own fascination, and realizing the influence she had on people just like me.